Let me ask you something. What if the one food sitting in your refrigerator right now, something you probably already have, something cheap, something ordinary, is either quietly protecting your blood sugar every single morning or silently making it worse? And here's what will surprise you. It has nothing to do with cholesterol. Everyone has been arguing about cholesterol for 30 years. That argument is a distraction. The real issue, the one that actually moves your numbers, is how you eat this food when you eat it and what you put next to it on the plate. Because this one food, eaten the right way, can keep your blood sugar from spiking by as much as 40 points. The exact same food, eaten the wrong way, can push your reading from 130 all the way to 178 before you've even finished your morning coffee. That food is the egg. And I know what some of you just thought. Dr. Alex Carter, I already eat eggs. But stay with me, because there's a specific mistake that almost every diabetic patient I've ever seen makes with eggs. A mistake that quietly cancels out every benefit this food has to offer. And there's one more thing I'm going to share before this video ends. Something I call the protein sequencing effect. Almost no doctor brings this up with their patients. But once you understand it, you will never think about your breakfast or any meal the same way again. My name is Dr. Alex Carter. I've spent more than 2 decades working with adults managing type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and that deeply frustrating gap between doing everything right and still not seeing the numbers move. Today, I want to have an honest, straight-talking conversation with you about eggs. Not the version filled with outdated myths, the version backed by current science and by real outcomes I've witnessed in real people sitting across from me in my office. Not the version filled with old myths, the version backed by current science and real outcomes I've seen in real people. Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love knowing where in the world this conversation is reaching. Let's start at the very beginning. Because most of the confusion around eggs and diabetes comes from one giant misunderstanding about how the diabetic body actually works. When you have type 2 diabetes, your cells have become less responsive to insulin. Think of insulin as a key, and your cell doors as slightly jammed. Glucose, the sugar that comes from your food, builds up in the bloodstream because it can't get through those doors efficiently. That's why your blood sugar stays elevated longer than it should after every meal. Now here's where eggs become genuinely interesting. Eggs contain almost 0 carbohydrates. A large egg has less than half a gram. That alone means they don't cause a direct glucose spike the way bread, juice, or even oatmeal does. But the real mechanism goes deeper than that. Protein in eggs are one of the richest sources of complete, high-quality protein available, slows gastric emptying. That means food moves more slowly out of your stomach into your small intestine, which delays and flattens the curve of any glucose that's being absorbed alongside it. This isn't a theory. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that protein consumed at the beginning of a meal significantly reduced post-meal glucose and insulin responses in people with type 2 diabetes. But here's the catch. That benefit only exists if one specific condition is met. The egg has to be eaten before or alongside the carbohydrate, not after it. The sequence matters enormously. Eat the toast first, egg second, and you've already lost half the benefit before you take a third bite. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You were told, probably by a doctor 10 or 15 years ago, that eggs would raise your cholesterol, clog your arteries, and that you should limit yourself to 2 or 3 per week, or switch to egg whites only. And you took that seriously. Some of you gave up eggs entirely. You switched to cereals or low-fat muffins and told yourself you were doing the right thing, even when the scale didn't move and the A1C didn't improve. Here's the updated science stated plainly. The 2020 Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee found insufficient evidence that dietary cholesterol from eggs raises cardiovascular risk in most healthy adults. A large analysis published in Heart Journal in 2018, following over 400,000 adults, found that moderate egg consumption was not associated with increased heart disease risk. The problem was never the egg. The problem was the refined carbohydrate sitting right next to it on the plate. What does that mean in plain English? The food you gave up might have been your friend all along. I want to tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 67 years old, a retired school teacher from Ohio. She had been managing type 2 diabetes for 11 years. She was one of the most disciplined patients I have ever worked with. She walked every single morning. She kept a food diary. She had given up desserts, white bread, and most things she actually enjoyed. She did everything she was told. And yet her fasting blood sugar was consistently sitting between 148 and 162. Her A1C was 7.4%. Not terrible, but not where she wanted to be. Not after 11 years of real effort and real sacrifice. When I asked her to walk me through a typical morning, she described this. She woke up and had a small glass of orange juice, just half a cup, the natural kind. followed by 2 slices of whole wheat toast with a thin spread of peanut butter and then a scrambled egg on the side. I asked her to test her blood sugar 90 minutes after that breakfast. She came back the following week. The reading was 187. The egg wasn't the problem. In fact, the egg was the only thing on that entire plate working in her favor. The issue was the sequence and the company it was keeping. That orange juice, even just half a cup, was delivering 13 grams of sugar directly into an empty stomach with nothing to slow it down. The whole wheat toast, while better than white bread, was still spiking her glucose. And by the time the egg's protein was trying to do its job, the damage was already done. I asked her to make one change. Drop the juice entirely. Eat the egg first. Move the toast to the middle of the meal, not the beginning. 3 weeks later, that same breakfast produced a 90-minute reading of 131. She looked at me and said, "I've been trying so hard for so long. I feel like someone finally turned on a light in a room I had been navigating in the dark." That's what one small sequence change did. Not a new medication, not a restrictive new diet. A reorder. Tell me your first name and where you're tuning in from. Let's make this a real conversation. Now let me give you the practical framework. Not just what to do, but why each piece of it works metabolically. The first principle, eat the egg first, or at minimum at the same time as your carbohydrate. This is the protein sequencing principle. When protein enters your digestive system before or alongside glucose, it triggers slower gastric emptying and stimulates something called GLP-1, a gut hormone that tells your pancreas to release insulin more gradually and steadily. That is the exact same mechanism that some diabetes medications try to replicate artificially. Here you have it for free in a food that costs less than $1. What to avoid? Eating your egg after you've already finished your toast, cereal, or fruit. By that point, the glucose spike is already building. The egg becomes a passenger, not a co-pilot. The second principle, cook your eggs in fat, not alone. Scramble or fry them in a small amount of butter, olive oil, or avocado oil. Fat also slows gastric emptying. It blunts glucose absorption. It increases satiety, so you're far less likely to reach for something sweet an hour later. Here's the nuance. Avoid cooking spray or highly processed seed oils, like soybean or canola oil used in large quantities. They add calories without the metabolic benefit, and over time, they can promote low-grade inflammation in people with insulin resistance. The third principle, pair eggs with non-starchy vegetables, not high glycemic sides. Spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes, bell peppers. These add fiber, which adds another layer of glucose blunting on top of what the protein is already doing. A 2-egg scramble with sautéed spinach and a slice of whole grain toast eaten after the eggs is a genuinely blood sugar-friendly meal. Here's what makes the vegetable pairing especially remarkable. The fiber in vegetables forms a physical gel inside your intestine that literally slows glucose absorption at a structural level. It's not a chemical trick. It's mechanical. And it works. Save fruit for mid-morning, not first thing alongside your eggs, because fructose on an empty stomach, even from whole fruit, processes differently than fructose eaten later in the day when your metabolism is more active. The fourth principle, avoid pairing eggs with sweet condiments or flavored creamers. Ketchup contains 4 grams of sugar per tablespoon. Most people use 2 or 3 tablespoons without thinking about it. Flavored coffee creamers can silently add 15 to 20 grams of sugar to a meal that was otherwise doing everything right. Read those labels. The egg earned its benefit. Don't take it away with what surrounds it. The fifth principle, 2 to 3 whole eggs per sitting, is the evidence-supported range. Whole eggs, not just whites. The yolk contains choline, which supports liver function and fat metabolism. It also contains fat-soluble vitamins that your body genuinely needs, especially as you get older. The egg white alone is incomplete. Don't leave the most nutritious part in the pan. If you're still with me and this is starting to click into place, type the number 2 in the comments right now. Now here is the part I promised you at the very beginning. The thing almost no one talks about. It's called the protein leverage effect. And it connects directly to why the timing of your egg matters even more if you tend to eat breakfast later in the morning or skip it altogether. Here's the mechanism. Your body has an appetite-regulating system that is specifically calibrated to seek out complete protein. If your first meal of the day is low in protein, say just toast and juice or a bowl of oatmeal, your brain doesn't register satiety properly. So you eat more throughout the morning. Often more carbohydrates, often something sweet around 10 or 11 a.m. That mid-morning craving is not weakness. It is biology responding to a protein gap. When you start the day with 2 whole eggs, you satisfy that protein appetite early. Research published in the International Journal of Obesity found that a high-protein breakfast reduced total calorie intake throughout the day, and specifically reduced cravings for sweet and savory foods later on. The actionable implication, make eggs your first protein of the day, not a side item. The anchor. Everything else builds around them. Robert was 71 years old, a retired engineer. Detail-oriented, the kind of man who brought a spreadsheet to his first appointment with me. He had been tracking his food for 6 months. He was doing everything right in the morning. Eggs, vegetables, no juice. His fasting numbers were improving. His endocrinologist was pleased, but his blood sugar was consistently elevated after dinner, not dramatically, but stubbornly sitting between 155 and 170 at the 2-hour mark, no matter what he ate in the evening. When I asked about his dinner habits, Robert told me he typically had chicken or fish, lean, well-prepared, but that he had stopped eating eggs at dinner because he assumed they were just a breakfast food. I suggested he try adding 1 egg to his dinner plate 2 or 3 times a week, a hard-boiled egg alongside his meal, or a simple fried egg served with roasted vegetables. 4 weeks later, his post-dinner readings had dropped consistently into the 128 to 140 range. At his next quarterly visit, his own physician looked at the log and asked what had changed. When Robert explained the egg addition, the physician paused and said, "I wouldn't have thought to suggest that. But the numbers don't lie." That is the moment I always come back to when someone asks me whether food really makes a difference. It does, but only when we stop treating meals as isolated events and start thinking about what each food is actually doing inside the body. One important note before we continue: if you are currently on insulin, metformin, glipizide, or any GLP-1 medication, changes in your diet can affect how those medications perform. As your blood sugar improves, some dosages may need adjustment. Please keep your healthcare provider informed as you make these changes. That communication is not optional. It is part of the strategy. Now let's talk about the mistakes, because knowing what to do is only half of it. Mistake number 1, eating only egg whites. Removing the yolk removes the fat and choline that help slow digestion and support metabolic function. Whole eggs consistently outperform egg whites for blood sugar management in most people with type 2 diabetes. Use the whole egg. Mistake number 2, eating the egg last. If your toast and juice have already entered your bloodstream, the protein sequencing benefit is largely gone. Protein goes first or alongside, always. This one change alone can shift your post-meal reading by 20 to 30 points. Mistake number 3, pairing eggs with high-sugar beverages. Orange juice, sweetened coffee, flavored protein shakes, these can raise blood sugar by 40 to 60 points before the egg has done a single thing to help. The drink undoes the meal. This is the most common mistake I see, and the easiest one to fix. Mistake number 4, only eating eggs at breakfast. Eggs are one of the most portable, affordable, complete proteins available to you. A hard-boiled egg as an afternoon snack or alongside dinner works the same metabolic mechanism at any hour of the day. Don't restrict them to morning. Mistake number 5, loading eggs with processed meats every day. Bacon, sausage patties, and deli ham introduce sodium and saturated fat that, over time, worsen insulin resistance. Pair eggs with vegetables, avocado, or a small portion of whole grain bread, not processed meat at every single meal. Mistake number 6, avoiding eggs entirely because of old cholesterol advice. This mistake costs people one of the most powerful and accessible blood sugar management tools available. The science has moved forward. The restriction hasn't caught up. Bring the updated data to your doctor and have that conversation. If you've made it this far, type 4 in the comments and tell me which mistake surprised you the most. Starting tomorrow morning, here is your plan. Simple. No special grocery run. No equipment, nothing expensive. Step 1, skip the juice. Replace it with water, black coffee, or unsweetened tea. Step 2, cook 2 whole eggs, scrambled or fried, in a teaspoon of butter or olive oil. Step 3, if you're having toast, eat the eggs first. Take 3 or 4 bites. Then introduce the toast. Step 4, add something green if you can. Even a small handful of baby spinach wilted in the same pan takes 30 seconds and adds meaningful fiber. Step 5, test your blood sugar 90 minutes after eating. Write down the number, do this for 5 days straight. That is the entire plan. No overhaul, no new supplements, no exotic ingredients, just sequence pairing and 1 beverage removed. And if you skip breakfast some mornings, a hard-boiled egg mid-morning with a small handful of almonds is a genuinely effective fallback that keeps the protein leverage working in your favor. A few months after we made those changes, Margaret came back for a follow-up appointment. Her A1C had dropped to 6.8%. Her doctor had reduced one of her medications. But what she said to me that day had nothing to do with the number. She said, "I don't feel like my body is working against me anymore. Like, maybe it was just waiting for me to learn the right language." That is what this is really about. It is not about eggs. It is about giving you back a sense of agency over your own health. The feeling that your choices matter, that the effort you are already making can actually work when it's pointed in the right direction. Your body is not your enemy. It has been doing its best with the signals it's been given. When you give it better signals, it responds, sometimes faster than you would ever expect. Margaret saw a real difference in 3 weeks. Robert in 4. You don't need a year. You need the right information and the willingness to test it. If this gave you something real today, a new angle, one thing you didn't know before, please give this video a like. It takes 1 second and it helps this information reach someone who genuinely needs it. And if you have a spouse, a sibling, or a close friend who has been managing diabetes for years and still feels like they're spinning their wheels, please share this video with them. Not as advice, just as a conversation worth having. And if you want more of this, real science, real patients, real practical steps every single week, subscribe to this channel. No filler, no hype, just what actually works. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personalized medical advice. Please consult your physician or a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet or medication routine. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.